The emergence of COVID-19 has forced the legal industry to rapidly undergo a fundamental transformation. I'm Jack Newton, CEO and co founder of Clio, the world's leading cloud based legal software provider. In each episode of Daily Matters, we'll explore what this new normal means for law firms, how legal professionals can find success while working remotely, and how lawyers can best serve their clients during this unprecedented situation. Today's guest is Heidi Alexander, Director of Lawyer Wellbeing at the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. Heidi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Heidi, first of all, how are you and your family doing?
Oh, well, I appreciate you asking. We're doing okay, actually. I have three young kids, a 6-year-old and two 4-year-old twins. So it's certainly been a challenge in our household with two adults who work full time. My wife is actually a healthcare professional. She's a pediatrician, so she's on the front lines. But we're trying to balance everything, trying to teach the kids something. I'm not sure whether we're teaching them much at this point, but they're definitely enjoying their time with us. I can say the one thing that I think is positive is that I think my kids are going to look back at this experience and they're gonna think of it fondly. They got to spend a lot of time with their family, so I'm trying to be optimistic about
Yeah,
things here, but I appreciate that.
agree. I think that's a silver lining, and I don't feel this
Yeah.
every day right now, but I've enjoyed spending more time around my kids and having them jump in the office and see them through the day to day a little bit. But I feel your pain. I feel like teaching them something every day is a stretch goal right now, and it's a lot to juggle.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Maybe a related question next, which is what's on your mind most right now? I would love to have you tell us a bit about any changes you're experiencing personally as a result of COVID-19, and tell us a little bit about what the broader climate looks like around COVID-19 there in Massachusetts.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely it's hitting us hard. Like I said, my wife is in the healthcare profession, so um, she had, she'd been learning about this back in February and had started prepping us, and it's not good in Massachusetts right now. Boston is definitely getting hit hard. And people are stressed. And so I actually started a new job on Monday. So I was formerly, as of last week, I was the deputy director of our state's lawyer assistance program, which
Hmm.
helps lawyers in a number of different ways. And as an extension of my work, I recently became the first director of our Supreme Judicial Court's Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing. And the goal is really to partially implement our Supreme Judicial Court's recommendations. There was a big report on well-being that they put out, which had some fantastic recommendations. But of course, right now, we're very much focused on the current crisis. And so, just in the past week, we have been meeting with people around the state to try to assess, what are the problems that attorneys are facing, from large firms to public agencies to civil legal aid to the solo and small firm practitioners, as well as the lawyers. And we're trying to take some steps to respond and to help all of those attorneys. So I think, attorneys, there's been a lot of changes, especially for the solo and small attorneys who, some of them were not accustomed to working virtually, right? Maybe haven't, experienced the technology and don't know how to use it. And so they're struggling. They're trying to figure out how to make it work. And if you look at our court system, so our courts have been working 24/7 to churn out orders, so that they can hear emergent matters telephonically, to do the most recent order has been service by email. And so, if you're a practitioner who really is not technologically sophisticated, you may not even understand what that means and what that entails.
Right.
So there's a lot of sort of interpretation, right, of these orders. So it's definitely, it's a lot. It's very challenging right now, very stressful.
So it's interesting. The world you walked into as this director of lawyer well-being is probably an entirely different job than you thought you were walking into when you accepted the job. I assume weeks or maybe months ago.
Well, I mean, it feels like it's taken on even more importance at this time. So, I fortunately, coming from the state's lawyer assistance program, I've been involved in a lot of these efforts over time. So I'm very familiar with the landscape. So I was able to jump right in and really work on some real initiatives that we're probably hopefully going to be rolling out today or early next week. So there's definitely a lot of movement. Certainly, no, it was not what I had initially expected, but this is just, this crisis is going to have a huge impact on attorney well-being. It already has. So.
What kinds of impacts are you seeing, Heidi? Is there? I know it's still early, but can you just see what kind of challenges you're seeing, and maybe what kind of advice you're giving to lawyers
Hmm.
that are encountering those challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So I think we're definitely seeing, like I said, the solo and small firm practitioners being hit hard financially, and also just being able to sort of comprehend how to continue to maintain their practice. And so when their inbox is full of these court orders every day, they're basically spending a pretty significant portion of their day just trying to read and interpret these court orders. Fortunately, our state trial courts just came out with a helpline, and so they now have this helpline that any user can call, including litigants, and they'll help you, sort of walk you through the case, tell you how to file things, or what you need to do, what the status is. So I think that's really helpful, and I'm definitely seeing a lot of great sort of great work by our courts in response to this. So certainly, yeah, solo and small firm practitioners, I hear a lot about financial issues, and so there are these SBA loans, there's the disaster relief loans, and other paycheck loans that people can get, small businesses can get, and I see a lot of small firms applying for those. So I definitely would, recommend looking into those. And of course, it depends on the type of practice. I mean, we're seeing attorneys who are at large firms who are being impacted in a different way. So some of these attorneys who are litigators, right? Their practice is continuing and maybe even increasing, and they're getting calls from concerned clients, and so they're having to navigate those issues. But of course, then there's other firms where maybe their entire practice is real estate or permitting, and they have no work at the moment. So there are a lot of different concerns based on where you are, and then we have law students, right? Law students who are worried that they may no longer have a job when they graduate. The In Massachusetts, our bar exam has just been postponed, so they won't be able to take the bar exam in the summer, and so law schools are trying to figure out what that means, and do these people graduate? is there a ceremony? Probably not. And how do we help them find these jobs when at this really difficult time when not very many people are hiring? So I think there's I think every attorney is seeing some sort of change, certainly in their practice, and added stress and anxiety.
Yeah, with the added stress and anxiety into a profession that already had plenty of it to start with, wanted to get your thoughts on this, which is, lawyers were already notorious for not prioritizing self-care and working too hard, and often not finding appropriate level of work-life balance or work-life blend, and we see the results of that in terms of increased rates of depression and substance abuse, and even suicide. Curious what your thoughts are on why that is. If there's a root cause that you think is driving that, and what do you think is the solution to that, when you're thinking about how do we get to
Hmm.
lawyers that have good overall well-being, especially in the midst of a crisis like this? How do we? What advice would you give? And curious what your thoughts on some of the structural aspects of what is driving lawyers to not take care of themselves in the way that they need to and should.
Yeah, and that's really what is the sort of the foundation of what my work is built on. Because back in 2016, the National ABA Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing put out this sort of seminal report on the rates of depression and substance use, and we know that lawyers suffer from that higher than the general population. So and there's a number of reasons because of that. I mean, if one, you think back to law school, being in law school, like the Socratic, sort of traditional Socratic method, is sort of like the quintessential anxiety provoking structure. and
Yeah.
so, and then you move on to the bar exam, and the bar exam is very competitive. Not everyone passes. Unlike mental health professionals, attorneys don't actually learn self care skills and other skills to manage their own well being while they're in law school. And I'm hoping that there's going to be more of that taught in law school. But in mental health care professionals, that's part of what they work on when they get a degree. They have to figure out how to care for themselves because they're dealing with clients and their own issues. And so there's lots of vicarious trauma, and they learn how to manage that. But as attorneys, we haven't. That's not what we focus on. And then, of course, we have the law firm culture and the focus on billable hours, working 24/7, and so that's a huge contributor. And then the other part of it is that we're a helping profession. That's what we do. We're here to help people, and a lot of times we place our clients' needs first. And you see this across the board. I mean, you see it with the legal aid attorneys, who are helping people, so that they don't get evicted from their homes. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult work. So I think that there's a lot of contributing factors to that. But on the sort of on the flip side, I think there's a lot that can be done to help attorneys. And so one of the things I talked about is education in law school or training, where people learn more about how to manage their stress. They learn what vicarious trauma is, and how to recognize it in yourself. And so, what I tell people is to be attuned to changes that you're feeling, like in your mind, in your body. Um, and be aware of those things. And clearly that's going to be happening a lot right now. People are going to find that there are changes, and when that happens, like, you have to make sure that you know where to go, like who to talk to, when you're seeing those changes. And so that might be, like a state lawyer assistance program, a clinician, maybe it's a EAP, an employee assistance program, that can refer you out to a clinician. There's other great resources, and I can talk more about those as well. But I think, the primary thing is really to be attuned to changes, and kind of, and remember that, if if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're certainly not going to be the best advocate for your client, and being, and doing the best work. And so that has to come. That really has to come first. So,
So let's talk about two things. Maybe first, what are some of the red flags that you would look for that you are uh, experiencing symptoms of physical or mental health well-being that you should act on and be concerned about? And then let's talk about resources that might be available, additional resources that are available to address those. But maybe would love to first hear what should you be looking out for?
yeah. So I think that, right now, especially, there you're everyone is going to be experiencing changes, and it's going to, I think it's going to feel like a roller coaster, and that's the reality. What we don't want to happen is that, you get to a point where, you can't get out of bed, and you're unable to function. And so, you know things like changes in your mood, or, if you're, someone who has a great sense of humor, and all of a sudden nothing is funny anymore. Just changes in your daily routine. And so, one of the things that people can do right now is to, try to maintain some sort of routine, whether it be, you get up in the morning, and maybe you exercise, which is, by the way, what I'm attempting to do after we do this. As you can see, I have my CrossFit t-shirt on
Oh,
here. I'm
good
a
for you.
big fan of CrossFit, so I've been doing my CrossFit workouts in the basement. But, things like that. And, I can tell you for myself, like, my gym, my local CrossFit gym, where I also coach there. We've been getting together on Zoom, and doing workouts together. And that's really helpful, because it makes you feel like, there's something within your control, and you can sort of keep some of your routine that you had before. And so, doing things like exercising, and, maybe sitting down and eating lunch, right? Taking a break for lunch. Because I think, sometimes, and this is what we've been hearing of attorneys, is that your day is sort of, it's just one, long day of work, and find it's hard to say it's hard to find those boundaries, right? Because you wake up in the morning, and you're at your workplace, and so you may have to sort of set some boundaries, and say, okay, I'm going to be working, between this time frame. And if that's not for you, at least give yourself a break. Say, I'm going to exercise, for an hour here. I'm going to, eat lunch with it, and then I'm going to spend time with my family, or I'm going to play a trivia game with friends, online, whatever it might be. But making sure to give yourself breaks, because you can't work,
Yeah,
24/7.
I think
Um,
you're right. Everything just blurs together. It's
yeah,
it's tough. That distinction
it
between work
does.
and your personal life becomes really, if it was blurry to start with before this crisis, it just got
Yep.
uh, amalgamated together entirely. And a couple other ideas I've heard of. Don't know if you have any response to these, but the idea of more physically compartmentalizing your workspace as well, like make a
Hmm.
physical spot in your home, which is where work happens, and make sure
Hmm.
that area is only for work, and likewise your
Yeah.
personal space remains your personal space. And
Yep.
I've also heard about the concept of rituals, and
Hmm.
something that you do. It could be a physical ritual, or a meditation, but an idea that you
Hmm.
are creating a physical break, a bit of a ceremony between moving from work and moving to home life.
Yeah, and what's great is that there are so many free resources now. So, we've been telling people about the Brown Center for Mindfulness. They have all these free mindfulness sessions that they're offering, weekly sessions. There's the Mindfulness and Law Society, and they have chapters all over the nation, and they're offering free weekly sessions. So, if that's something you've never done before and you're interested,
Yeah,
now might be be the time, right? So there's a lot of great. I mean, I think there are a lot of great resources for people. And I think the other thing that we hear from practitioners, and we hear this from practitioners, especially solo and small firm practitioners, even outside of this crisis, is the issue with isolation. And that happens when you're doing work for your client, and you just don't have a network of other practitioners. And we're finding it even more so now because people are at their homes. And so if there
right.
are ways that you can connect with other attorneys, or other people, maybe it's some of your law school friends, or who, and having something, maybe once a week to connect, having a group of attorneys who all practice in the same area getting together once a week. One of the things I did hear, having a conversation with a large firm attorney, and one of the things he said that I loved is, he said, there I work with all of these people across the nation, and typically when I connect with them, I pick up the phone and I call them. But now I'm using video chat, and I actually am having more face to face communications with people
Right.
than I was having before. And I think a lot of people are finding that. So,
Yep, I
that
am
is,
certainly.
something what, right? I mean, maybe we wouldn't have been doing this, right? if
We would
this
have been
weren't
doing this,
happening.
and
So,
I have found
yeah.
that many of the phone calls I would have had are defaulting to video
Yep.
chats, and
Yep.
you realize how much more engaging that is, and how much more
Right.
personal it feels having a face to
Yeah.
face conversation, even if
Yeah.
it's over a video chat.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's great. I mean, I think that's one silver lining of all of this. So,
And where do you, Heidi? One question I have
mhm,
is, where do you find that community where there maybe isn't the physical meeting places and the
mhm,
physical networking opportunities that existed in the past? Where can people get started if they say, I want to meet some other lawyers in my practice area and want to create a little bit of a, maybe we get together for a Zoom happy hour once a week, or
mhm,
maybe I want to create a mastermind group and
yeah.
get a group of lawyers engaged on that. How do you go about doing that? How do you kind of bootstrap if you're starting from zero?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, I think that at least in Massachusetts, a lot of the local bar associations are offering those opportunities. It's a
Yep.
great way to connect with other attorneys. If you're part of a bar association, or maybe you're in a state that has a mandatory bar association, I would be looking to see what the bar association is offering, or just reaching out to some of the other members of the bar association, and that's an easy way to do that. There's tons of Facebook groups now. So if you're
Hmm.
someone who's on Facebook, I mean, there's no lack of Facebook groups, and that are specific to lawyers. And so those are also good opportunities to connect with people, or create your own. I mean, oftentimes you'll have maybe some solo practitioners that all practice on the same floor, right?
Yeah.
And they can all get together, just call up your buddy next door, and get the whole floor chatting. So we're fortunate to have great technology that can allow us to do that now. So, definitely utilize that. I think that's important.
Your comment around the number of Facebook groups that are out there. I remember there was a gathering of really fit seeming women at ClioCon last year, and I got chatting with them, and I asked how they knew each other because they seemed like buddies, and they said, "Oh, we're in the women's women lawyer Peloton group on Facebook."
Oh,
And I thought, "Oh,
oh,
that's really specific."
I
um,
didn't know about that one, but that's great. I might have to join that one. Yeah, I love there's the hiking lawyers. Hiking lawyers is a great group. But and Peloton, wow, they're doing great because they're now offering their service for 90 days for free. So
oh, is that
that's
right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and they have everything on there. It's cycling, walking, yoga, meditation. Yeah, so
And
good
a
resource
great
for
example
people.
of how to create community in a virtual way, right? And they
Yep.
obviously did it, with
Yeah. Yeah.
not anticipating the use
Yeah.
case that would be this pandemic. But I think
Right.
it's a good example for us to look to in
Yep.
terms of just how powerful you can take some of those physical things, like a spin class that you might think, how could this
Mhm.
ever get recreated
Right.
in a virtual world, and actually see it
Yep.
done in a really well executed way.
Yeah.
Um, Heidi, I'm curious. We're seeing obviously all the immediate impacts that the COVID-19 crisis is having on the profession and the kinds of pressures it's putting on the profession. I'm curious, what kind of long term impacts do you think this might have on the legal profession, and do you think any of those long term impacts will be specifically related to lawyer well being?
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, well, I guess I'll start with some of the negative impacts. I mean, I think this is going to have a major financial impact on law firms, particularly the solo and small firm practices that don't have that cash flow or the savings to continue to run their firm. So that's going to be a big one. But I do see a lot of opportunity, and I'm trying to look at this optimistically and figure out where there are opportunities. And I think one thing we're seeing is that especially in our courts, there have been sort of exponential changes. I mean, the advances that they have made in terms of the use of technology just in the past
Yeah,
week is unbelievable. And
it's incredible,
the
isn't it?
yeah, I mean, the fact that they're doing things that are much more efficient now for both the court and practitioners, that I mean, those are changes that I hope will stick and will sort of propel the legal profession
Yeah.
forward in a way that we haven't seen in the past. And so, I think we're also going to see, new ways of serving clients, right? Practitioners who have not in the past, used video conferencing and done their work and connected with clients virtually are now going to be able to do that, and they're probably going to find that may actually be more efficient. And so I think that that's going to be a good positive effect. And then the other thing is that I think in terms of well-being, I think that this is going to have a big impact on uh, our um, our sort of ability to be resilient, and also the creation of community. And so, going through this all together, especially if you can establish some of those communities, I think we're going to be a lot stronger. I'm hoping we're going to be a little bit more civil because of it, and and I think we're going to be much more resilient because we've made it through this, and this is, it's not easy for anyone. So I do hope that this is going to create just a sort of enhanced sense of community in the legal profession, and I think it already has.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bonding that can happen in a time of crisis, and we're seeing
Hmm.
people adapt really rapidly. I think that one of the things I've been excited about is that the crisis has created almost permission to experiment with new things,
Mm-hmm.
and we're seeing things that I think, as you pointed out, changes in the courts, for example, that would have taken years or decades to play
Yeah.
out, or maybe they never would have happened without a forcing factor like this.
Hmm.
And I think those have the promise of being permanent and positive changes to the way we we access justice.
Yeah.
When you think about the solo small firm practitioners and some of the maybe longer term positive impacts we could see here, is the financial distress that's going to be created over the coming weeks and months going to result in you believe the bankruptcies, for example, or is it going to lead toward uh, a lower cost structure being adopted by solo small firm lawyers, where they do things like work from home, for example, instead of out
Hmm.
of a more formal office space, and maybe with distributed staff versus everyone being
Hmm.
in one office, and so on, or a mix of both. I'd be curious for your perspective
Yeah.
on what you think the the response will be in the profession.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I think there's a lot of unknowns right now. I mean, I definitely have seen law firms now who are already laying off employees, right?
Hmm.
And because they don't have any cash flow at this time. So could firms go bankrupt? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's very smart to think about how we can streamline operations, and do things a little bit more efficiently and effectively, so that we don't have that overhead. And so I think that's hopefully that'll be a positive result of all of this, is that people will really be thinking about how to streamline their operations. And I think people are already thinking about that. And I also hope that people are also thinking about long term, or maybe not right now, but when we sort of get back into the groove of things, that they're focused on their finances. And I know for many firms, they may not have a budget to operate from. And so thinking about putting together a budget, having some savings to draw on, all those things are really important. I mean, it's what I train lawyers when I was helping lawyers start law firms. We'd always talk about financial statements and budgeting, but that's going to be really important, and I think people are going to see that importance in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Heidi. To conclude, I'm wondering if you have any special parting thoughts for our listeners, either as legal professionals or just as human beings, that you'd like to leave us with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we we take this day by day. I would definitely encourage anyone who is feeling stressed, or is just needs a way to manage these changes, is to reach out and seek help, seek support. I think there's so many fantastic resources right now, and other resources that are forming, that you can certainly play a part in. Volunteer your time. For example, what I'm trying to roll out today is a tech line for our practitioners in Massachusetts to call, so that they can receive technology assistance and assistance in practicing remotely,
Oh, that's
especially
so
for
great.
attorneys who have never done it, yeah, before.
Yeah,
And we're actually staffing it with lawyers. So it's going to be staffed by a lot of young lawyers who are pretty sophisticated in this stuff. So the young lawyers have jumped on this because they're
that's
looking for a
amazing.
way to give back, and this is a great way for them. So look for those opportunities too. But again, we're going to make it through this, and we're going to be better because of it. And again, seek out support when you need it.
Well, that's a great parting thought. And thanks so much for joining us, Heidi. I really enjoyed our conversation, and you left us with a lot of practical advice on how to navigate some of the various challenges we'll be facing over the coming months. Thanks for spending the time with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on Daily Matters today, a podcast from Clio. Rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Daily Matters is produced by Andrew Booth, Sam Rosenthal, and Derek Bolin, and hosted by yours truly, Jack Newton. Thanks also to Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal technology provider, for supporting this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Clio, please visit clio.com.